Hi everyone, and welcome to The Sleepy Scientist. I'm really happy you're here. Tonight, we're going to go on a calm and quiet trip to learn something amazing. So get comfy, take a deep breath, and let's enjoy this peaceful science story together. Before we start, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it for you right now? If you like relaxing science videos, don't forget to tap the like button. Now let's begin. There is a kind of silence that does not come from the absence of sound, but from the weight of space itself, a silence that stretches between stars like a soft black ocean with no waves. When you look up at the night sky, the stars seem to flicker and hum, but they do so in complete quiet. They burn with unimaginable force, yet not a single crackle escapes into the dark. This is not the silence of a quiet room or the stillness of a sleeping forest. This is the deep, absolute silence of a vacuum, where there is no air, no wind, no whisper, and nothing for sound to hold on to. The silence between the stars is so perfect that if you screamed inside it, your own voice would die at your lips, swallowed by the nothing before it ever began. Imagine drifting there, weightless, your body wrapped in a suit that protects but cannot comfort you from the quiet. There are no birds, no breeze, no beating of wings or scurrying feet. There is only your breath, thudding inside your helmet, and even that is not truly sound in the way we know it. It is just vibration carried through metal and bone. Beyond your skin, beyond your ship, beyond the pulse of your own blood, the universe keeps still, not because it is asleep, but because sound cannot travel without something to carry it. Sound needs matter. It needs air or water or walls. But space, pure space, is a place where sound has no shoes to walk in, no thread to hang from. It is a place where silence is not just a lack, but a law. And yet stars explode, planets crash, black holes tear entire suns apart. These things happen with fury, with violence, with unimaginable energy, but not with sound. If you stood at the edge of a supernova, close enough to see it bloom but not so close as to be turned to ash, you would see something that should roar, but it wouldn't. The fire would rage silently, a storm without thunder, a scream without voice. And this, more than anything, makes space feel like a dream, because what kind of place holds so much drama and says nothing? Back on Earth, we are used to the way sound wraps around us. It is part of how we know we are alive. The laughter of a friend, the rustle of leaves, the knock of rain on a window. These are our companions, our constant reminders that the world is busy and breathing. But in space, those reminders fall away. A comet could pass you by and you'd never hear its ice whisper. A planet could tumble in silence. Even your own spaceship, if it were to fall apart, would do so in eerie hush, metal breaking in total quiet. It's not that these things don't make sound, it's that their sound has nowhere to go. This is because sound is not just a feeling or an idea. It is a wave, a physical wave that moves by pushing molecules, bumping them into each other like dominoes in a line. Air carries these bumps to your ears, and your brain turns them into music or voices or thunder. But space is empty. No molecules, no dominoes, no wave, and so no sound. Even the loudest noise imaginable would die stillborn in the vacuum. In the silence between the stars, nothing can shout and be heard. This is not a poetic idea. It is pure science. Physics teaches us that no medium means no message. Sound is the child of movement and matter. Without both, it cannot exist. But still, we listen. Not with ears, but with tools. Radio telescopes sweep the sky not for sound waves, but for light waves stretched into radio form, whispers of stars that hum not in air, but in energy. We translate these waves into something we can hear, bending the rules of silence just a little. And through this trick, we give the universe a kind of voice. A star's flicker becomes a tone, a galaxy's spiral becomes a song, not because they speak, but because we want to hear. Because we can't bear the thought that such vastness has no echo. Even now, as you read this, Earth is spinning in a sea of nothing, surrounded on all sides by quiet. The sun blazes with soundless fire. The moon swings around us without a sigh. Everything that lives beyond the edge of our atmosphere lives in silence, complete and perfect. And yet it is not lonely, for this silence is full of light, full of motion, full of solemn meaning. It is the kind of silence that holds secrets, not emptiness. It is the kind of silence that listens even if it does not speak. You can almost feel it, that hush, that infinite pause between stars. It is not cold, it is still, not empty, but waiting, like a breath the universe forgot to release. In that pause, in that vacuum, lies a truth we rarely touch. That sound is not the only way to know something. That quiet can be full of presence. That silence, when deep enough, becomes a kind of music. Now imagine floating deeper into that hush, past the glitter of nearby stars, past the comfort of familiar orbits. You are drifting into the heart of the nothing, not a void of meaning, but a place where meaning is not spoken aloud. Here the silence between stars stretches longer, softer and stranger. Time moves differently in such places, not because the clocks are broken, but because the usual cues, sounds, footsteps, voices, are gone. You cannot measure a second by the tick of a clock or the rhythm of speech. You measure it by the movement of your breath, by the soft thrum of your own thoughts. In this silence, even thinking feels louder. Yet even this emptiness is not truly empty. Between stars, between galaxies, there are particles drifting on stray atoms, ancient photons, bits of cosmic dust older than memory. They do not sing, but they dance. Slowly, invisibly, they shift and swirl in the dark. And if you could shrink yourself down small enough, if you could become the size of a single particle, you might feel the tiniest pressure as one passed another. Not a sound, not even a whisper, but a nudge, a presence. The universe, even in its quietest corners, is never truly still. There are waves here too, but not sound waves. Gravitational waves are ripples in the very fabric of space and time, sent out by massive collisions. Black holes crashing into each other. Neutron stars spiraling like ice skaters who have lost control. These waves do not carry sound, but they carry energy. They travel not through air, but through space itself, warping it gently like a sheet of water disturbed by a single drop. We cannot hear these waves, not with our ears, but with delicate instruments tuned to feel the tiniest trembles. We have begun to sense them, and when we do, it is as though we are listening to the deepest parts of the universe, not through sound, but through motion, through change. The quiet of space is filled with these invisible waves. They stretch across light years. They pass through stars and planets and people without stopping. Some scientists have said that if we could truly listen, if we could tune ourselves not just to sound, but to space itself, we would hear the soft murmur of the universe stretching and breathing. Not a song, but a pulse. Not a word, but a presence. A cosmic heartbeat, so slow and wide that it takes billions of years to make itself known. And still, we want to know more, so we build machines. We launch them into the dark, hoping they'll listen better than we can. Voyager, the lonely spacecraft that left Earth decades ago, carries with it a golden record, a collection of Earth's sounds, greetings, music, the rustle of life. It drifts now far beyond the planets, in the silence, carrying our voice into the void. Not because we think someone will hear it, but because we needed to speak. We needed to believe that even in a place where no sound can travel, our message might matter. That silence could be broken not by volume, but by meaning. There is also the silence of light. Light, like sound, moves in waves. But it does not need air. It glides through the vacuum without hesitation. That's why we can see stars, because their light crosses the silence to reach us. In this way, the universe speaks not through sound, but through brightness, through patterns, through flashes and shadows. Every flicker is a message. Every galaxy, a library written in light. And we are learning slowly to read it, to understand the stories told not by voices, but by colours, by brightness, by rhythm. The silence between stars, then, is not mute. It is simply speaking in another language. Our bodies, tuned for Earth, struggle to grasp this. We are creatures of sound. From our first moments, we learn the world by hearing it. Our heartbeat is our earliest lullaby. The voices of parents, the echo of footsteps, the crash of waves, these shape our sense of place, of presence. But space asks us to feel differently, to learn again, to accept that a place can be full without being loud, that a thing can exist without announcing itself. In this way, silence becomes its own kind of teacher. It reminds us that listening is not always about ears. The astronauts who floated it in orbit speak of this silence with awe. They say that looking down on Earth, Seeing its clouds roll without a whisper, watching lightning flash without thunder, feels like watching a dream. They can see life moving, hear it in their memory, but around them there is only stillness, only the quiet hum of machines and their own breath. Some say it is peaceful, others say it is overwhelming, but all agree it is unforgettable, because it changes how you think about sound, about connection, about presence. On Earth, even in our quietest moments, we are never truly silent. A breeze will rustle, a bird will call, a floorboard will creak. But in space, silence is complete. It is not just around you, it is in you. It becomes part of your thinking, part of your dreaming. And in that silence, strange thoughts can bloom. You wonder what it means to hear, what it means to be heard, whether the universe in its silence is listening after all. Maybe it is not that the universe cannot hear us. Maybe it hears in a way we cannot imagine. Maybe it listens not for sound, but for attention, for motion, for change. And so we drift, in ships and in thoughts, through this silent sea. We watch the stars flicker, we feel the soft pull of gravity, we learn to read the light, and in the stillness we begin to understand silence is not the opposite of sound. It is a space that holds it, a frame around it, a canvas waiting for it. The silence between the stars is not empty. It is sacred. It is the breath before the song. If you close your eyes now and imagine yourself adrift between galaxies, the silence will not feel like absence anymore. It will feel like presence. This quiet, once unsettling, becomes the deepest companion. There is no ticking clock, no murmur of life, only the endless breath of the cosmos holding you gently. The silence between the stars is not mute. It listens in ways that no human ear can mimic. It observes with stillness. It welcomes without echo. And you, floating in that vast hush, begin to hear something not in your ears, but in your bones, a kind of knowing, as if the universe is humming beneath everything, too low and too slow for sound, but always there. In this silence, time becomes water. It moves without edges, rippling gently around you. Stars are born and die in a silence so complete it feels holy. Nebulas bloom in pink and gold, and their petals stretch for light years without a single rustle. Even the galaxies, those great wheels of dust and light, spin in complete quiet, like dancers moving to a rhythm that only the dark can feel. And still everything moves, everything changes. The universe, though silent, is never still. Consider the photons, tiny packets of light that leave a star and travel for millions of years to reach your eyes. They never stop, they do not rest, and they never make a sound, but they bring messages in colour, in frequency, in warmth. This is the poetry of physics, that light, not sound, is the true language of the universe, a language that crosses the vacuum, a language that paints, reveals, illuminates. So while the space between stars does not carry sound, it is not without voice. It simply speaks in brightness, in energy, in so deep it becomes expressive. And yet, in our need to feel connected, we try to sing back. We send signals, we build telescopes that listen for alien whispers, stretching our ears to catch even the faintest noise from the dark. But maybe what we are really doing is asking not to be alone. Maybe we search for sound in the vacuum because silence reminds us how small we are, how far apart everything can feel. But the truth is, the universe is not ignoring us. It has always been with us. It has just never needed to shout. Some scientists now believe that silence itself may carry information, that the shape of space, the patterns of expansion, the stillness of the void all tell a story. The universe may be humming, not in noise, but in math, in waves of gravity, in shifting background radiation, in the balance of forces too delicate for our ears, but not too delicate for our hearts to wonder about. We listen with instruments, yes, but we also listen with longing, and perhaps that's what the silence is really for, not emptiness, but invitation. The silence between the stars offers space to imagine. It invites us to feel awe, to stretch beyond what our bodies can hear. In doing so, it teaches us that sound is not the only form of connection. There is listening too in the way we gaze at the night sky. There is understanding in the way we reflect, in the way we soften our minds to absorb the stillness. The silence also reminds us of fragility. On Earth, noise is everywhere, a sign of life, of movement, of industry. But space shows us that silence is natural, that quiet is not something to be feared, but something to be honoured. In fact, the silence between the stars may be one of the rarest and most precious states in the cosmos. A balance so perfect that it cannot be heard, only felt. A pause that makes the universe's beauty clearer. And when we return from the imagination of space, when our thoughts drift back to this small planet spinning in the quiet, we carry something new with us. An understanding that silence is not nothing, that it is not a gap, but a frame. It lets us focus. It lets us wonder. It holds the stories of stars, the dreams of galaxies, the shape of time itself. So the next time you look up at the sky and see the stars twinkle, remember, you are seeing soundless songs. You are witnessing the universe's quiet voice shining through dark oceans of space. You are not alone in the silence, you're part of it. The silence between the stars has room for you. It is ancient, it is sun, and it is always listening. Let it remind you that some truths are too soft to speak, that some beauty is too vast to sing, that some answers don't need to be heard, only felt in the stillness between the stars. There is a question that floats through the minds of those who wonder about space. If so many powerful things happen out there, explosions, collisions, the birth and death of stars, then why does it all happen in such quiet? Why doesn't space echo with the fury of galaxies crashing or the roar of suns igniting? It feels like there should be noise, not just noise, but sound so enormous it would shake the soul. Yet the universe stays hushed. This mystery, why space is quiet, is not just about science. It's about how we understand sound itself and what it means for something to be heard. Sound is a traveller, but it is also needy. It cannot move on its own. It must ride on something, air, water, steel, even your skin. When someone speaks, their voice pushes air molecules, and those molecules push other molecules, all the way to your ears. It is a chain of little nudges, a relay of motion. But in space there is nothing to push. No air, no molecules dancing close enough to pass the signal along. So even if a star could shout, even if a black hole could howl, their voices would be trapped inside them, unable to go anywhere. The silence of space is not a whisper, it's a wall. And yet the events in space are anything but quiet in nature. Supernovae, the deaths of massive stars, release more energy in a few seconds than our sun will in its entire lifetime. These are not calm endings, they are violent, blinding, wild acts of transformation. They should be noisy. They should shake the air, break the sky, thunder across the universe. But they don't, because out there energy travels as light, as radiation, as invisible waves that have no sound at all. What we would hear as a deafening crash, space sends out as a silent flash. When we look through telescopes and see these brilliant bursts, we are not watching from within the noise. We are outside the scene, observers of light but not of sound. It's like watching a movie with the volume turned off. You see the drama, but you feel it differently. And maybe that's why the silence of space feels so haunting, because it hides so much fury behind so much calm. There are places in space where particles gather near planets, inside nebulas, the edge of stars, and there you might find a little bit of sound. Tiny murmurs, short-lived waves of vibration. But these sounds are not like ours, they are brief, they are faint. They do not travel far, they cannot fill the cosmos. Even the sounds NASA has recorded from space, like the eerie hums of Jupiter's magnetosphere, are not truly sound as we hear it. They are electromagnetic waves, turned into something our ears can understand. They are translations, not the original voice. It's easy to think of sound as something that simply exists wherever energy does, but that's not the case. Sound is a relationship between a source, a medium, and a listener. Without all three, there is no sound. A bell does not ring in a vacuum, a drum does not thump where no air can move, and the universe, grand and glowing, stretches mostly through vacuum. Not total emptiness, but emptiness enough to make sound impossible. Still, this silence holds meaning. It helps us understand the scale of space. On Earth, you can hear a whisper from across a room. In space, even the loudest event is silent unless you are close enough to touch it. And even then, you might only feel it as a burst of radiation, a surge of light, a ripple in gravity, not as a sound. This is the universe's strange gift. It shows us that silence is not nothing. It is not absence. It is another way of being. If you stood near the surface of the moon, you would see Earth glowing in the sky, blue and alive. You would see sunlight stretch across the grey rocks, but you would hear nothing. Not the wind, not your footsteps, not even the soft shift of dust. Only inside your helmet, through your own air, would you hear your breath, your pulse, your voice, and even those are borrowed sounds trapped in the tiny bubble around you. Beyond it, everything is still. This is the truth. Space does not echo because it cannot. It is not that the universe chooses to be ambient, it is built that way. The vacuum is not a soundless place by accident, it is a soundless place by design. And that design forces us to listen differently, to see vibration not as noise but as light, to understand movement without volume, to know power not by how loud it is, but by how far it reaches. And so the next time someone says space is quiet, don't imagine it as boring or blank. Imagine it as a quiet cathedral with stained glass walls made of stars, a place where everything happens but nothing shouts, where energy flows but doesn't speak, where the only sound is what you carry with you, your thoughts, your breath, your wonder. That is the echo that matters, the one inside. Some of these light waves we can see, others are invisible to our eyes, infrared, ultraviolet, X-rays, gamma rays, but all of them are part of the spectrum, part of the grand chord the universe plays. We build telescopes not just to see but to listen to this light. We turn radiation into images, into graphs, into music, and in doing so we find new rhythms, new patterns. The way light flickers from a black hole, the way stars dim and brighten as planets pass in front of them, the way distant galaxies blink, caught in the act of becoming. These are all voices in the great quiet, all parts of a silent composition still unfolding. And we, floating here on this small spinning world, are listeners. We are part of the music made from its dust, shaped by its tempo. Our hearts beat in time with gravity. Our thoughts flicker with the same electricity that drives the stars. Even our breath carries echoes of the gases first forged in ancient suns. In every moment, in every breath, the music of the universe plays through us. Not loud, not with drums or strings, but with the quiet elegance of motion and light. So when you imagine the empty places, the dark stretches between the stars, do not picture them silent and still. Picture them alive with rhythm, with waves, with hidden harmony. Picture them as vast halls of motion, where light dances and matter moves in patterns older than memory. That is the music of space. Not the music of sound, but the music of being. And it is still playing. If you were to fall asleep floating in space, gently turning through the dark, you might dream of songs without voices, notes without instruments, and melodies that move through time itself. You would not wake to a sound, but to a feeling, a sense that the cosmos is not still at all, but swaying slowly forever. This is how the music of empty places reveals itself, not as something played, but something happening. It unfolds in the pull of gravity, in the glow of distant stars, in the slow spinning of galaxies. And though we often speak of silence in space, what we are really speaking of is a different kind of listening, one that does not rely on ears, but on patience and wonder. At the edge of the observable universe, more than 13 billion light-years away, the light that reaches us now left its source before the Earth even formed. That light, tired and stretched thin by time, still carries patterns. Its colour, its warmth, its angle, all of it tells a story. A story not of chaos, but of rhythm. The universe has been expanding in time with these stories. Even the background radiation, that quiet hum from the Big Bang, is uneven in a musical way, full of tiny fluctuations like static from a forgotten song. It is not a perfect tone. It is textured, shaped, broken into rhythms that stretch across the sky. Physicists have modelled this radiation as a kind of sound, not the sound we hear with ears, but a translation, a way of imagining the early universe as if it could be played on a grand instrument. And what they've found is astonishing. The early universe may have rung like a bell after the Big Bang, vibrating with pressure waves that move through the hot plasma. These waves were not heard, but they shaped the structure of everything that came after, the way galaxies formed, the way matter clumped, the way light bent. These silent waves wrote the blueprint of the cosmos, like music scoring the architecture of space itself. Back on Earth, musicians and scientists have begun to collaborate, converting cosmic data into sound. They call it sonification. The flicker of a black hole becomes a slow beat. The light curve of a dying star becomes a gentle violin swell. These are artistic interpretations, but they reveal something real, that the data of the universe is rich in rhythm, that its silence is not blank, but full of encoded beauty. Through this work, we do not pretend that space sings, but we recognize that its patterns speak in ways music understands. It makes you wonder, maybe we created music because we are part of this rhythm. Maybe our sense of harmony, our love of melody, our need for time and beat and repetition comes not from culture but from cosmos. The stars dance in spirals, and so we dance. The light flickers in waves, and so we hum. The black holes pulse in gravity, and so our hearts learn to drum. There is a music in us, because there is music in the world that made us. We are not just surrounded by this silent rhythm, we are shaped by it. Even dreams seem to echo this. When we sleep, when the noise of the day falls away, we fall into rhythms, breathing, heartbeat, the slow swirl of thoughts. The brain's electrical pulses move in patterns. Our deepest dreams follow cycles, stories that rise and fall like a lullaby. Perhaps it is here in our most silent hours that we are closest to the music of the universe. Not in concerts or cities or celebrations, but in stillness, in moments when we remember that everything, even nothing, is moving. Some scientists believe that one day we may hear even more, that there are deeper waves, longer beats still hidden in the void, that the structure of the universe itself, the shape of dark matter, the pulse of expansion, may one day be read like a score. It would not be music in any traditional sense, but it would carry the same gifts, meaning, beauty, motion, order. And even if we never decode it fully, even if we can only guess at the tune, we will still feel it, because we already do. The quiet between stars is not a silence of sleep, it is a silence of presence. Like the moment before the first note in a symphony, like the breath before a poem begins, space waits. And in that waiting it speaks. It tells us that not all songs are sung, not all music is made with hands or mouths. Some of it is simply lived, some of it is felt as a tide of starlight on the skin, or as the curve of the Earth's shadow across the moon. We are part of this song. Every heartbeat, every orbit, every flicker of thought is a contribution to the quiet rhythm of everything. We may not always notice it, but it never stops. Even in our stillness we are moving. Even in the dark we are glowing. And in the most distant corners of the universe, where no life has ever walked, the music of empty places continues, vast, slow, perfect. So when you look up at the sky and feel a hush fall over your thoughts, know this, you are listening. You're hearing, in the deepest sense, the oldest song of all, the one made not of sound, but of pattern, of gravity, of time. A song so wide it contains galaxies, a song so quiet it lives in silence, a song that never needed words to say, you are here and you belong. In the heart of every breath, every leaf, every star, there are atoms, tiny invisible knots of matter that make up everything we see and everything we are. They are not loud, they do not shout, but if you could somehow shrink down small enough far beyond the reach of microscopes or machines, you might find that they whisper, not in sound but in movement, in trembling, in electric fields and subtle forces. This is not a whisper we can hear with ears. It is quieter than quiet, softer than silence, a language written in the gentle flickers of the universe's tiniest building blocks. And even in the emptiest stretches of space, where no air moves, where no sound can travel, atoms are still whispering in the void. Atoms are not solid little balls. They are mostly empty space with a dense core, the nucleus, at their centre, surrounded by a cloud of electrons that flit and swirl like moths around a flame. The electrons never rest. They exist in probability, in motion, in patterns shaped by energy and chance, and even when alone, even when floating in the deepest vacuum of interstellar space, an atom continues to move. It vibrates with quantum energy. It shifts with temperature, with light, with magnetic fields so faint they seem imaginary. But they are not. These motions are real. They are the whispers of the atom. Out in the vacuum of space between stars and galaxies, where it seems there is nothing, there are still atoms, lonely spaced far apart, drifting for centuries without a single collision. They are not silent. Each carries a charge, a shape, a history. Each responds to light, to radiation, to the gravity that bends space around it. Hydrogen atoms, the simplest kind made of just one proton and one electron, are the most common, and they drift like ancient seeds through the void. When their electrons shift from one energy level to another, they emit a tiny signal, a photon of light. One of the most famous of these emissions is the 21 centimeter line, a radio wave that tells us where hydrogen is, how it moves, what it touches. It is like a whisper in the dark, a way for atoms to say, "I am here." And we are listening. Our radio telescopes sweep the sky for these signals, these delicate emissions from single atoms spread across the vastness of space. The information we gather from these whispers allows us to map galaxies, to trace the shape of the early universe, to understand the flow of matter through cosmic time. It is strange to think that something so tiny, so quiet, could reveal so much. But atoms are storytellers. Every shift, every transition, every pulse of light they emit carries a message about the environment around them. And in the stillness of space, these messages travel without interference, unbroken for billions of years. Even here on Earth, atoms whisper. In your body, trillions of them are moving right now, shifting positions, sharing electrons, forming bonds. Every thought you have, every blink, every heartbeat is made possible by atoms trading energy, following patterns. These movements are not loud. They are not something you can detect without machines, but they are constant. They are precise. And in their precision, there is a kind of music, a rhythm of life built from silence. Quantum physics tells us that even when an atom is alone, at absolute zero temperature, the coldest possible state, it still vibrates. This is called zero-point energy, and it means that motion, that whisper, is woven into the fabric of existence itself. The universe cannot help but move. It cannot help but sing, even if the song is too soft to hear. And in that song, atoms are both the notes and the singers. Some of the most subtle whispers come from atomic clocks, devices that measure time not by ticking hands, but by the vibrations of atoms. These clocks are so precise they lose only 1 second every 100 million years. They keep the rhythm of GPS satellites, of scientific experiments, of our understanding of time itself. All of this built on the tiniest, quietest pulses of matter. Atoms that whisper again and again in perfect harmony. In the deep voids between galaxies, the number of atoms is low, just a few per cubic meter. But even here they speak. Cosmic rays, high-energy particles from distant sources, collide with these atoms, setting off tiny reactions, releasing more particles, more light. These brief events ripple through the silence like sparks in a dark room. They are rare, but meaningful, like sudden bursts of poetry in a quiet conversation. And as we listen more closely, we begin to realize that these atomic whispers connect everything. From the farthest quasar to the molecules in your skin, the same rules apply. The same interactions occur, the same quiet motion links it all. The whisper of an atom in a distant cloud of gas is not so different from the whisper in a drop of water, or a gust of wind, or a cell dividing in your hand. This is the unity of the universe, a single language spoken in whispers too small to hear. In the end, it may be the quietest things that shape the loudest outcomes. Stars ignite because atoms fuse. Galaxies form because gravity pulls atoms together. Life emerges because atoms organize into molecules that can copy and change and grow. All of it begins with motion, with energy, with the tiniest ripple in space. All of it begins with a whisper. Let us move closer to the heart of this stillness, where the whisper of atoms becomes not just a curiosity, but a living thread that ties the cosmos together. If you could sit quietly among them, among the clouds of drifting hydrogen, the strands of carbon, the sparks of oxygen and iron and gold, you would begin to feel their motion, even without hearing it. It would rise slowly, like warmth, like a hum below your skin, a kind of awareness that everything around you is alive with movement, even when that movement is invisible, even when it travels alone across the vast empty miles of space. In laboratories on Earth, scientists use tools to catch these movements, machines so sensitive they can detect the change in an atom's energy just from a small flicker of light. They shine lasers at atoms and watch as the atoms respond, absorbing and releasing energy in bursts of perfect quiet rhythm. These bursts tell us stories about temperature, pressure, motion, and change. And when we compare atoms in different places, we see that their whispers are shaped by their surroundings. An atom in a magnetic field behaves differently than one drifting alone. A cold atom slows its dance, a hot one flutters faster. And in this way, the atom becomes not just a particle, but a reporter, a traveller with tales to tell from wherever it has been. Now picture a gas cloud far from any star, cold, dark, barely moving. Even here, atoms whisper. They collide so rarely that each encounter is precious. When two hydrogen atoms meet, they might bind for a moment, forming a fragile molecule. In doing so, they may release a photon, a tiny flash of light that travels for billions of years, straight and unbending, until it reaches the dish of a radio telescope on Earth. That single photon, that quiet flash, becomes a note in a vast cosmic song, a signal from the silence reminding us that even in the loneliest places, the atoms are not forgotten. The more we study these tiny interactions, the more we realize how connected they are to everything. The chemistry of stars, the colors of galaxies, the temperature of the cosmic microwave background, all of it begins at the level of atoms. It is in the way electrons shift positions, the way nuclei wobble, the way photons are absorbed or reflected. And what's more astonishing is that these behaviors follow rules, not laws written in stone, but patterns written in probability. Quantum mechanics teaches us that atoms behave like waves and particles at the same time, that their whispers are not certain, but likely. An electron does not travel in a clean orbit. It exists in a cloud of possibility. And yet, from this uncertainty, clarity arises. From these tiny maybes, the universe builds mountains and oceans and minds. This whispering continues in stars where atoms are pressed together by gravity until they fuse, creating new elements and releasing enormous amounts of energy. Every atom of calcium in your bones, every atom of iron in your blood was forged in a star's quiet core, where nuclear whispers became the heartbeat of creation. The atoms did not shout, they did not ring bells or beat drums, but they changed. They transformed. They released light and heat that travelled across space to shape new worlds. These whispers built the planets. They built the air. They built you. And when a star dies, especially a giant one, it may explode in a supernova, scattering its atoms across space in a final, brilliant gesture. These atoms drift, mix, settle. Some find their way into new stars, new planets, new life. The atoms in your body may once have belonged to many stars, scattered across many centuries. They remember in their quiet way. They carry history not in memory, but in form, in structure, in rhythm. Even now, in every second, billions of atoms inside you are changing. Some are decaying, some are bonding, some are spinning in place. None of them are loud, none of them are trying to be seen, but they are at work. They are keeping you alive, they are whispering the code of life over and over, without pause. DNA, the molecule that carries the instructions for every living thing, is made of atoms arranged in a precise sequence. This sequence is read, copied, and repaired endlessly by molecules built to understand it. It is a conversation, and not of words, but of structure and shape. A quiet dialogue of atoms that began billions of years ago and continues in you. We tend to think of atoms as things, tiny objects that build larger ones. But in truth, they are more like events, like patterns of energy that repeat, shift, and move. They do not exist in one place, but in many. They are not static. They are always in motion, always in conversation with the universe around them. Even when held in your hand, they are not still. They are vibrating with the heat of your skin, pushing against each other, bouncing off the edges of their bonds. The table you rest your hand on, the air you breathe, the water you drink, all of it is alive with this silent dance. And the void, the vacuum, the so-called nothing, it is not a true emptiness. It is full of potential, full of space where atoms might go, where particles might appear and vanish in quantum flickers. It is a stage, not a grave. A silence filled not with absence, but with waiting, with readiness, with the soft hum of something about to begin. The atoms whisper not because they are quiet, but because they are constant. Their presence is a language too deep for sound, too old for memory. It is a language that builds everything and asks for nothing in return, and if you learn to listen, not with your ears, but with your mind, you will hear it. You will feel it. The whisper in the light, the whisper in your breath, the whisper that says, "You are made of stars. You are part of the dance. You are not alone in the silence." Now let us bring the whisper home, not just to Earth, but to the space within you. For though the stars may seem far and atoms impossibly small, the truth is that the same silent rhythm plays through your entire being. Every cell in your body is alive with it. Every organ hums with quiet chemistry. Atoms exchange electrons in your brain as you read these words, and those exchanges form your thoughts. You're not just observing the whispers of the universe, you're composed of them. You are the stillness between explosions. You are the result of collisions and fusions long faded into silence, but whose effects echo on in your bones, your breath, your dreams. The whisper of atoms is most evident when we slow down, when we sit quietly in a room and feel the gentle thud of our heart, when we hold a warm cup and sense heat moving through the ceramic, when we breathe and feel air slide into our lungs. These are not grand events, those are not loud or bright, but they are built entirely from atomic motion, heat transferring, molecules shifting, cells responding. At the scale we can perceive, it seems simple. But beneath the surface, trillions of particles are moving, interacting, adjusting, each whispering their part of the great unfolding. This is why silence is never truly empty. Even in the quietest place you've ever been, atoms are still moving. They cannot help it. Their very nature is to interact, to vibrate, to carry energy. And this behavior is not random. It follows patterns, beautifully precise, deeply reliable. These patterns are what make matter hold its shape, what make energy flow, what make time meaningful. Without the whisper of atoms, nothing would last, nothing would breathe, nothing would change. There is a kind of humility in this. To know that all of existence, every star, every planet, every person, depends on the quiet work of things too small to see. We live in a world shaped by giants but built by whispers. Our minds often crave noise, spectacle, certainty. But atoms remind us that the most important work often happens in stillness, in subtlety, in patience. The tree grows not by thunder, but by the silent stretch of its cells. The tide shifts not by command, but by the moon's invisible pull on water. The body heals not by ceremony, but by proteins folding in silence. Even in technology, in the phones we use, the screens we touch, the machines we trust, the true action lies at the atomic level. Tiny bits of silicon hold charges that represent our words, our memories, our voices. And those charges move through gates, not with a bang, but with a whisper. The whole digital world, loud as it seems, is founded on silence, on electrons gliding through circuits, on switches that flip without sound, on a conversation between atoms that never needed to be heard to be powerful. One of the greatest mysteries of modern science is the role of quantum entanglement, the way two atoms, once connected, can remain linked across vast distances, changing together even when separated. It seems impossible, as if the universe itself is whispering not just through space but through time, as if reality has layers we do not yet understand and quiet channels beneath the surface where information flows without moving, without sound, without delay. We cannot hear these whispers, but we know they're there. We see their effects, and they remind us that the fabric of the universe is more delicate, more subtle, more alive than we ever imagined. All of this, the fusing of stars, the formation of cells, the blinking of computers, the beating of your heart, all begins with atoms. And every atom is a kind of miracle. It has no voice, but it speaks. It has no mind, but it remembers. It carries history in its structure and potential in its motion. It is not just matter. It is story. It is rhythm. It is presence. And in the vast quiet of space where stars are born and galaxies drift apart, the atoms continue their work. They whisper into the void. They vibrate with possibility. They dance without audience. Their song is older than life, and it will continue long after. But for a brief moment, they have come together to form you, to give rise to a being who can wonder, who can listen, who can understand. So when you close your eyes tonight and feel the silence settle in your room, know that it's not empty. It is full of motion too quiet to hear, full of life too small to see, full of atoms whispering the ancient language of the stars. And somewhere in that whisper, if you listen with your whole self, you might just hear the soft truth the universe has been singing all along. You are part of this. You are made of this. You are never alone in the quiet. If silence had ears, what would it hear? This is not just a question for poets, but for physicists, philosophers, and anyone who has ever stared into the night sky and felt small. The universe stretches in every direction, vast beyond comprehension, and yet it feels somehow aware, as if it's not only unfolding but listening. Not with ears like ours, not with sound, but with sensitivity so deep it reaches through time itself. To ask whether silence can be heard is to ask whether the universe in its quietest places still knows we are here. It is to wonder whether there is meaning in the stillness, not just because we wish there were, but because the silence behaves like something paying attention. On Earth, hearing is a gift born from pressure, waves, and air. Sound needs a medium, and we're lucky to live in a world thick with matter, full of air, water, leaves, bones, all of which help carry sound. But space is not like that. It offers nowhere for sound to ride. Its silence is not empty, but structured. It is a vacuum not of meaning, but of sound's traditional pathway. Still, we send out noise, messages, broadcasts, vibrations, as if hoping the universe might notice, as if it has its own way of hearing. But maybe the universe does hear, just not in ways we understand. Maybe its ears are gravity wells listening to the movement of mass. Maybe its hearing is woven into the stretching of space, the pull of light through the dark. Every time a comet moves, a planet spins, a black hole grows, these things change the shape of space-time. They leave echoes, not in air, but in the fabric of reality itself. These echoes do not roar, they ripple, and through them the universe might be registering every step. It's strange to think that black holes, the quietest things we know, might be the best listeners. They absorb everything, light, time, information. Nothing escapes. But in that swallowing, in that endless taking in, they change, they grow, they record. In theory, even if a black hole cannot reflect a sound, it carries the impression of what fell in. Like a page pressed by a finger, it holds the memory of touch, even when the finger is gone. Is that not a form of hearing? Elsewhere in the vast nothing between stars, gravitational waves pass through, bending space gently as they go. These waves come from ancient collisions, the merging of neutron stars, the dance of black holes. We detect them now, using instruments so sensitive they can notice changes smaller than a proton's width. What we are feeling is not sound, but a kind of cosmic listening, a way of knowing that something has happened far away without ever hearing it in the traditional sense. The universe then is not silent. It is active in silence. Even light behaves like a message. When we see the afterglow of a supernova, we are seeing light that began travelling long before our species even existed, and yet we receive it. The photon that lands in our telescope has travelled unbent for eons, untouched, unspoken, yet full of information. Light carries with it the memory of where it came from, and when we receive it, we are not just seeing, we are participating. We are completing a journey that began in silence. This is not sound, it is not hearing, but it is something close. It is contact. Some scientists believe the universe may be sensitive to observation itself. In quantum mechanics, particles behave differently when they are observed. They collapse from a cloud of probabilities into a single measured state. This suggests that observation, attention, is not just passive. It changes what is real. And if that is true, then the act of watching, of noticing, of being aware, shapes the universe just as sound shapes the air in a room. Perhaps silence can be heard not because it vibrates, but because we are present in it, because we engage with it, because we care. There is also the notion of background noise, not just in the sky, but in ourselves. Your ears may hear nothing in the deep quiet of night, but your brain still buzzes with electricity, your heart still thumps, your cells still communicate. Silence to you is never absolute, and perhaps the same is true for the universe. Even in its most distant places, there is still movement, still time, still change, still a kind of internal sound, a music without a speaker, a message without a sender. So when we ask whether silence can be heard, we are really asking about the limits of perception, about whether stillness has meaning, about whether absence can contain presence. And the universe, in its endless patience, answers with clues, with the hum of microwaves from the Big Bang, with the bending of light around galaxies, with the faint whisper of gravitational waves. We may never know whether the universe is listening, but we do know that we are, and in our listening we discover meaning. We translate the silence into wonder, into math, into stories. We build telescopes not just to see but to hear the unspeakable. We lean toward the stars not because they call, but because the quiet around them feels full of something waiting. Perhaps the ears of the universe are not instruments. Perhaps they are people. Perhaps they are us. Let's move deeper now, beyond sound, beyond sight, into the idea that silence itself may be a kind of conversation. Imagine for a moment that the universe is not empty at all, but filled with awareness. Just not the kind we know. Not thoughts, not emotions, but patterns of motion and interaction that register what passes through them. A gravitational wave ripples through space-time, and the universe bends, as if flinching in recognition. A photon leaves a star and travels for billions of years, its path altered ever so slightly by a passing planet. In these subtle changes, these adjustments in path and pressure, there is a kind of memory, a kind of listening, a kind of hearing. Even the most barren parts of the cosmos are full of potential, waiting fields where particles might appear, where energy might shift. Virtual particles pop into and out of existence in these silent zones, borrowing energy from nothing, existing just long enough to leave behind the trace of a possibility. These flickers do not make sound, they do not speak, but they alter the vacuum, they adjust the environment in quiet, delicate ways. Like footprints in sand, they show that something has passed through, and this change, and this slight difference, may be the universe's way of registering that something happened. A kind of hearing not through vibration but through alteration. The idea may seem strange, that silence could be interactive. But our own bodies offer clues. Consider how your skin feels wind, how your eyes adjust to darkness, how your mind processes stillness. Even in silence you're receiving information. The absence of noise is still a message. A room with no sound still tells you something, about presence, about distance, about mood. Your body doesn't need ears to listen. It listens with nerves, with balance, with breath. And perhaps the universe listens in the same way, through gravity, through temperature, through shift and swell and stretch. We now know that black holes do not merely absorb. They also emit, through a strange phenomenon called Hawking radiation. At the edge of a black hole, particles may form and one may escape, carrying energy away from the event horizon. This process is not a loud one. It happens slowly, silently, over unimaginable lengths of time, but it is, in a way, an exchange, a response, as if the black hole, that deepest well of cosmic silence, is whispering something back. Not a scream, not even a voice, but a flicker, a nod. And what about the background hum of the universe, the cosmic microwave background, that faint residue from the birth of everything? It is a soundless presence, but not an empty one. It carries slight fluctuations in temperature and density that map the early moments of space and time. Scientists have studied these fluctuations and found them to resemble harmonics, mathematical patterns that resemble the structure of musical tones. If you converted these patterns into sound, they would make chords, intervals, pulses. We are not inventing the music. We are uncovering it. It was always there, buried in silence. It's important to understand that hearing, in the broadest sense, is just the detection of change. On Earth, sound is the way we detect changes in air pressure. But in space, other things change. Gravity shifts, particles accelerate, light bends. And wherever there is change, there is information. And where there is information, there is something to receive it. We build instruments to extend our senses, radio telescopes, neutrino detectors, gravitational wave observatories, all designed not to hear in the human sense, but to notice what the universe is doing. To catch its silent messages and translate them into language we understand. We've even begun to imagine the universe itself as a kind of quantum computer, a system that processes inputs and changes state, based on rules we are only beginning to grasp. In this view, everything that happens leaves a mark, however faint. Every photon absorbed, every atom split, every mass shifted, all of it contributes to the universe's memory. In this way, the cosmos might be listening not to us, but to itself, continually updating, adjusting, evolving. When we say that silence can be heard, perhaps what we really mean is that silence can be felt. The absence of a voice is still a presence. The pause in music creates space for meaning. The silence after a question is as important as the answer. And in space, that silence is vast, but not void. It contains the structure of galaxies, the echo of beginnings, the shape of time. And perhaps the most beautiful part of this quiet is what it reveals in us. When we sit in silence, when we look up at the stars and feel the hush fall over our thoughts, we are not just gazing outward. We are entering into the same stillness that shaped everything. We are returning to a shared silence, the one that was there before words, before songs, before life. The silence that knew stars before they formed, that felt the weight of planets before they spun. So yes, silence can be heard, not with ears, not with sound, but with something deeper, a kind of recognition, a resonance, a feeling that we are not separate from the universe's quiet, but part of it. We are not just the ones who listen. We are the silence itself, learning to understand. In the deepest reaches of space, where stars are distant memories and light takes eons to drift from one place to another, the silence is thick enough to feel. It presses against the edges of thought, asking questions without words. It is not the silence of nothingness, but the silence of attention, as if the universe itself is listening, waiting, remembering. And maybe, just maybe, it is. Maybe silence is not what happens when nothing is speaking. Maybe silence is what happens when everything is heard. Think of this. Every time a telescope turns its eye to the sky, it gathers the ancient light of stars, the signals of atoms, the shape of unseen forces. But what is it gathering if not a response from the cosmos? A kind of answer, held in temperature, in angle, in frequency. These are not noises, yet they are messages. They are ways the universe speaks back, not because it intends to, but because it simply is. Presence becomes a kind of language, movement becomes a kind of statement, and we, by observing, become part of that exchange. The silence, then, is not a lack of sound, but a fullness of being. It is how the universe acknowledges without speech, responds without motion, remembers without memory. It is the pause that allows all motion to have shape, all light to have meaning, all gravity to have weight. It is not passive, it is not still, it is not waiting for us. It simply is, and always has been. From the moment before time began to the heat-death future some physicists envision, the silence continues. But it is not dead space. It is the space in which everything lives. Consider the echo of a heartbeat in a sleeping forest, or the creak of a wooden floor in an empty room. These sounds, when isolated, become more than noise. They are surrounded by space, they are shaped by quiet. They become significant because of what frames them. The same is true of the universe. The stars shine brighter against the dark. The pulses of distant neutron stars ring more clearly in the stillness. We hear the structure of the universe not because it makes noise, but because silence gives it room to be noticed. In the most literal sense, we cannot hear in space, but we can sense, we can perceive, we can feel the whisper of cosmic microwave background in our measurements. We can register the faint pull of gravity in the fall of starlight. We can feel the shift in light that tells us something massive passed between us and a faraway galaxy. These are not things we hear, but they affect us as deeply as any sound might. They stir us, change us, make us aware. They draw us into the rhythm of things far beyond our scale. And more than that, the silence draws us inward. It reminds us that to be alive is not just to speak, but to sense, to know without needing noise. In the quiet of space, we see clearly what Earth's noise so often hides, that listening is not about waiting for sound, it is about making room for wonder, room for stillness, room for discovery. And when we make that space, we realize something profound. The silence is already full. Even now, there are scientists working with instruments that stretch the very limits of perception, listening to changes in laser alignment, to shifts in magnetic fields, to echoes of particles that lived for less than a breath. They are not doing this to hear noise, they are doing this to understand the language beneath it, the language that needs no sound. The universe may not speak in words or tones, but it speaks in patterns, and patterns are a kind of listening, a feedback loop between what is and what comes next. We might be the only beings we know who wonder whether the universe can hear us, and yet that wondering is itself a part of the story. Because to ask that question is to open the door to a new kind of hearing, one that does not wait for sound but accepts silence as an answer. When we launch probes into space with golden records, with greetings and songs and math and art, we do not expect a reply in sound, but we hope for a reply in motion, in return, in resonance. That hope, too, is a kind of listening. Perhaps the ears of the universe are not structures, they are interactions. Moments when the trajectory of light bends around a star, when particles meet and scatter, when energy transfers from one atom to another. These are not ears, and yet they detect, they respond, they change, and if to hear is to receive, then yes, the universe is always hearing. So as you lie in your bed tonight, beneath a sky too vast to see all at once, know this: you are part of that silence. Your breath, your heartbeat, your thoughts, they are not isolated. They are woven into the quiet rhythm of everything. The atoms in your body once floated through that same silence, carried from stars that died long ago. They remember, not with sound, but with presence. You are not just listening to the silence, you are helping to shape it. In this way, the question, can silence be heard, answers itself. Not with ears, not with words, but with the quiet awareness that all of this, all of us, are being felt, noticed, received. The silence is not empty. The silence is listening. And perhaps in our stillest moments, so are we. In the quiet folds of space where no wind blows, no leaf turns, and no voice echoes, vibrations still move, even when no one is there to listen. These are not the vibrations of music or machinery, but of something older and stranger, the very trembling of reality itself. Even in what we once thought of as nothing, there is motion, there is ripple, there is shift. This is the physics of nothing, the study of the spaces in between, the vacuum that is never truly empty, and the restless dance that continues whether we are watching or not. At first, the vacuum of space seems like it should be still, cold, silent, blank. But the deeper we look, the more we discover that nothingness is not truly nothing. Quantum mechanics tells us that even in a perfect vacuum, particles appear and vanish in pairs. These particles, called virtual particles, exist for just a fraction of a second, borrowing energy from the void before disappearing again. They are brief, unpredictable, and absolutely everywhere. Their motion is not recorded on any microphone. Their presence is not visible on any screen, and they are real. We can measure their effects. We can see how they influence the energy of space, how they pull on the edges of atoms, how they change the way particles interact. This background of invisible movement is called quantum vacuum fluctuation. It's as if the universe cannot help but twitch even in its sleep. Like a breath that cannot stop, a pulse that continues long after the song has ended. Even the coldest, darkest, most lifeless pocket of space is buzzing. Not with sound, but with possibility. It is as if the universe is whispering in a language older than matter, saying, I am still here. There are vibrations in the field of existence itself, the Higgs field, for example, that gives mass to particles. It's not a thing you can see or touch, but it's always there, filling space like a sea of invisible syrup. Particles move through it, and in doing so they gain weight, resistance, form. These interactions are not loud, they do not flash or sing, but they are constant, and without them there would be no structure, no atoms, no stars, no life. These field vibrations don't wait for us to listen. They move because that is what existence does. Even light, something we often think of as a beam, a ray, a straight line, is a wave. It ripples through space, through time, through the silence. Every colour we see is the result of a vibration, a frequency of light that determines what our eyes perceive. But if we were not here, if no eyes had ever opened, would that light still ripple? Yes, because the vibration is not for us. It simply is. Sound needs a listener, but vibration in the language of physics does not. It moves whether anyone knows it or not. There are particles called neutrinos that pass through your body by the billions every second. They do not interact with you. They do not slow down, but they carry information. They ripple through matter without touching it. They are the messengers of explosion in the hearts of stars. They are vibrations without listeners, silent currents that flow unmeasured through the universe, steady and invisible. We only recently learned how to detect them, and even now we catch only the faintest hint of their presence. But their journey continues, with or without our awareness. This idea that vibrations can exist without anyone to sense them is unsettling at first. It suggests that the universe does not need us to be complete, that the dance of atoms, the swell of waves, the spin of galaxies, all happens without applause. But it is also comforting. It means that our reality is stable, that it does not depend on attention, that the laws of physics do not need to be witnessed to be real. They are not made by being observed. They are simply expressed, like wind moving across a desert, even if no one watches the sand shift. And yet we are part of this too. Our thoughts are made of electric pulses, our speech of vibrating air. Our very consciousness arises from rhythms in the brain, cycles of firing neurons, waves of chemical exchange. These are vibrations too. We are not separate from the physics of nothing. We are one of its many outcomes. Our bodies are full of silent tremors. Our molecules hum with thermal motion. Our existence is layered with frequency, from the beat of the heart to the rise and fall of breath, from the blinking of cells to the deep, slow pulse of the earth itself. In fact, even our atoms are mostly empty space. The nucleus is tiny, the electrons smaller still, and the space between them vast. Yet these particles are bound together by forces, fields that ripple even in silence. The stability of matter comes not from solidness, but from vibration, from motion within stillness, from balance within energy. You are made of these quiet forces. You are constructed from this unspoken dance. And you, like the rest of the universe, are always in motion, even when you are still. So when you think of nothing, remember this: nothing is never truly nothing. It is full of flickers, of waves, of patterns too small to see, vibrations without listeners, movements without music. But they are there, keeping time for a universe that never stops humming. You don't need to hear it to know it's real. You don't need to understand it to be part of it. You already are. Now drift even deeper into the quiet, into the subatomic spaces where the idea of stillness begins to fade entirely. We often speak of nothing as a kind of absence, a lack of light, of matter, of sound. But here, in the hidden realm of quantum fields, we begin to understand that nothing is filled with everything waiting to happen. The vacuum, once thought to be the universe's blank page, is actually its canvas, textured, rippling, alive with hidden motion. And these motions and these vibrations are the foundation of reality. They are not noise, they are structure, they are law. The fields that fill the universe are invisible but not soaring. They stretch through space and time like oceans of energy just beneath the surface of perception. Every particle we know, every electron, every quark, every photon is just a ripple on one of these fields. When a field vibrates in just the right way, a particle appears. That particle isn't separate from the field. It is the field caught in motion, like a wave cresting in water. This is how physics now sees the universe, not as a collection of things, but as a collection of vibrations, each humming in its own key. And whether or not anyone is there to hear it, those vibrations shape the entire cosmos. These fields can interfere with each other, combining waves or cancelling them out. They carry information across vast emptiness, forming patterns of constructive and destructive interaction. They echo with principles we can express in equations, but not in sound. Yet these equations tell us everything, from how stars form to how matter clings together, to how time itself might bend. The vibrations of these fields are not for performance. They are for being. They are the reason anything exists at all. Even gravity, the gentlest and most mysterious of forces, may have its own form of vibration. When massive objects move, they send ripples through space-time itself. These are gravitational waves, and they move at the speed of light, stretching and squeezing the very structure of space. They pass through planets, through people, through the vacuum, changing everything they touch, even if only slightly. And these waves do not stop to ask whether someone is listening. They move because the universe moves. They vibrate because motion cannot be undone. Some theorists believe that even time itself may arise from these quantum fluctuations, that the forward arrow of time, the unfolding of moments, is not a given but a product, a pattern formed by entropy, by the increasing disorder of vibrating systems. If true, this would mean that the ticking of time is just another vibration, not of sound, but of possibility. The future unfolds not because we push toward it, but because everything is moving, and that motion creates change, a rhythm, a direction, a song of becoming. In the Large Hadron Collider, scientists accelerate particles close to the speed of light and smash them together, not to create sound, but to reveal the vibrations of fields too subtle to observe otherwise. These collisions echo through detectors in flashes of energy, in sprays of new particles, in patterns that tell a story billions of years old. Each experiment is a listening act, and yes, not with ears, but with intention. They are designed to detect vibrations from the void, to reveal the secret movements within what once was thought to be still. And it is not just in machines that these quiet forces unfold. In your body, atoms vibrate constantly. The energy of heat is not a glow or a flame. It is the motion of molecules dancing faster. Cold is not the absence of something, but the slowing of that motion. Even when you are at rest, you are filled with the internal motion. Particles exchanging energy, nuclei trembling in place, bonds stretching, flexing, reforming. These are vibrations without music, and yet they make you who you are. You may think of your skin as still, your bones as solid, but at the atomic level you are a collection of oscillations, of tiny humming systems in balance. These vibrations keep you alive. They allow enzymes to function, allow nerves to fire, allow cells to grow and divide. Your heartbeat is a wave, your breath is a cycle, your brain is an orchestra of frequencies, where thought emerges not from a single note, but from the interplay of countless signals firing in quiet harmony. So perhaps the physics of nothing is really the physics of everything, of motion without matter, of energy without noise, of meaning without sound. These are the vibrations that do not need listeners. They do not wait for a mind to notice them or a sense to register them. They are self-sustaining. They simply happen. They are the background hum of being. Even now, as you sit quietly, you are surrounded by these silent pulses. The earth is vibrating from the pull of the moon. The atmosphere hums with electromagnetic waves. Cosmic rays pass through your body. Your molecules respond to temperature and pressure and time. The vacuum outside the planet seethes with quantum unrest. And beneath it all, fields fluctuate in perfect stillness, not making noise, but building reality one tremor at a time. This is the secret song of the universe, not one we hear, but one we are part of. It is not composed, it is not played, it is not even finished. It is continuous, endless, unyielding, and even if no one ever noticed, it would still go on. That is what makes it beautiful, that is what makes it true. Now let us follow this invisible rhythm to its quiet conclusion, not in an end, but in a deepening, a sinking into the realization that everything we call nothing is in fact a sea of constant becoming. There is no silence without vibration, no stillness without the echo of movement beneath it. Even when a space appears empty, even when time feels paused, the universe continues its quiet performance, humming not for applause, but because motion is woven into its very nature. This is the paradox of nothing, that it is full. The vacuum, long thought of as the blank stage where physics played out, is instead the player itself, active, living, restless. The forces that shape the world, gravity, electromagnetism, the strong and weak nuclear forces, do not vanish when we close our eyes or fall asleep or drift into the black between stars. They ripple, they adjust, they speak not with sound but with presence. And because these forces never stop, neither does the fabric of space, nor the ticking of time, nor the construction of matter from pure possibility. It is easy to imagine that something is only real if we can hear it, see it, touch it. But the vibrations we've followed in these invisible fields don't ask for our senses. They are too small, too fast, too quiet to be captured directly. Yet without them, atoms would not bind. Stars would not burn, galaxies would not spiral. Life as we know it would be impossible. These are not small roles, these are not background details. They are the frame of everything, and yet their silence is profound. These vibrations occur in the absence of audience. No mind creates them, no ear captures them. They are not for us, though we benefit from them endlessly. They are the silent scaffolding upon which existence is built, a kind of constant murmur in the bones of reality. Every theory that has pushed our understanding forward, relativity, quantum field theory, string theory, has had to grapple with this, that the void is never void, that the silence is never mute, that the quietest spaces are the most alive. Even death, in the language of physics, is not stillness. When a star collapses, it does not vanish. It transforms. Its mass becomes a neutron star or a black hole or a field of drifting ash. The particles rearrange, the forces shift, the fields continue their dance, nothing disappears into silence. It is simply retuned. Even the black hole, with its reputation for erasing all things, still leaks energy through Hawking radiation, still bends light, still shapes space around it. These are not the acts of a silent thing, they are the echoes of vibration so deep, so intrinsic, that even nothingness must bow to it. And here we are, living on a quiet planet in the outskirts of a spiral galaxy, born from dust that once belonged to stars, breathing air made from atoms forged in ancient cores. Our bodies are not immune to these vibrations. We are made of them. Our blood flows in pulses. Our neurons fire in rhythms. Our sleep follows cycles aligned with the spin of the earth. Even our thoughts have frequencies, like whispers across the mind. We dream, we remember, we create. And all of it arises from the physics of nothing, the tremble beneath matter, the hum that never ends. The idea that the universe might vibrate even when no one is there to witness it tells us something about meaning. It tells us that purpose does not have to be attached to awareness, that beauty can unfold in empty places, that truth does not need an audience. The vibrations of the universe are impartial. They are not moral, they are not artistic, and yet through them, galaxies bloom, mountains rise, consciousness awakens. Through them, something comes from what we once called nothing. And perhaps that's what this is all about, the recognition that we are not apart from the void, not separate from the silence. We are not the only source of vibration. We are just one expression of a deeper wave. When we speak, when we think, when we wonder, we are joining that vibration. We are adding our own frequency to the ancient song. And when we stop, the song continues, stretching into the future with the same quiet certainty that brought it through the past. So when you stand in the dark and feel the quiet, know this, you are not alone. The silence is not empty. The nothing is not nothing. Beneath your feet, within your breath, and around the edges of everything you cannot name, vibrations ripple. They have no listener, and yet they never stop. They are not noise, but truth, soft, steady, eternal. The physics of nothing is not a contradiction. It is a reminder that even when you hear nothing at all, the universe is still speaking. And perhaps deep down you are still listening. Light moves through darkness like memory through silence. It does not speak, but it remembers. It does not wait, but it listens. In every corner of the cosmos where sound cannot travel, where air is absent and silence rules, light continues its quiet journey. And while light cannot hear, not in the way we do, it responds. It bends, it shifts, it stretches. In these delicate changes, these subtle acts of attention, there lies a question worth asking. What does light hear in the dark? The darkness of space is not truly black. It is full of light that is simply too faint to see, too stretched to notice, or travelling in wavelengths our eyes cannot register. Infrared glows softly from the cold dust clouds. X-rays dart out of dying stars. Ultraviolet whispers from hot young suns. And yet, in the deepest places, between galaxies, beyond stars, far from any flare or flicker, there are places so vast and so empty that even light seems lonely. But even there, light is not deaf. It encounters gravity, it encounters time, and in both it listens. When light passes near a massive object, a star, a planet, a black hole, it curves. This bending is not a failure but a form of interaction. Light does not argue, It does not resist. It changes its path in silence, as if listening to the shape of space itself. Einstein called this gravitational lensing. It allows us to see galaxies hidden behind other galaxies, to observe echoes of light from things too far to see directly. In this bending, light hears the presence of mass, not through sound but through distortion. It is a response, a soft agreement between energy and matter, written in angles instead of volume. And time too speaks to light, not as a ticking clock, but as a field that stretches and compresses depending on where it flows. In strong gravity, time slows down. This causes light to lose energy as it climbs away from massive objects, stretching into redder wavelengths, a phenomenon known as gravitational redshift. Light hears time differently depending on where it has been. It carries that story not in words but in colour. The light that reaches us from the edge of a black hole is not the same light that left it. It is tired, pulled thin, as if it listened to something heavy along the way. Even across great distances, light changes. As the universe expands, it stretches space itself, and as light travels through this stretching, it stretches too. Blue becomes red, brightness fades, what once burned hot becomes cool. The cosmic microwave background, that faint hum of energy left over from the Big Bang, is not just a leftover glow, it is stretched starlight, slowed and softened over billions of years, like a voice whispered once and repeated in echoes so long they become a song. Light, here, has listened to time itself. But perhaps the most poetic thing about light is not how it hears, but how it teaches us to listen. Every photograph of a galaxy is a lesson in waiting. The light from that galaxy may have taken millions, even billions of years to reach us. We are seeing it not as it is, but as it was, long before our world existed. In this way, light carries the past, carefully, across the silence. It does not forget, and when it arrives, it does not shout. It merely arrives patient and intact, ready to be seen. This patience, this steady endurance is what allows us to study the universe. Telescopes are not microphones. They are eyes trained to listen in light. And yet what they do is remarkably similar to listening. They receive signals, measure shifts, look for patterns, interpret responses. They tell us when something has moved or burned or exploded. They tell us what is out there, not through speech, but through colour and shape and glow, through silence turned visible. Even in our daily lives, we experience this gentleness. The golden hue of sunset, the blue softness of shadows, the cool quiet of starlight, these are not just colours. They are the language of distance and time and position. A tree's shade is not simply darkness, it is filtered light, shaped by leaves and wind and angle. It is a response to form, a kind of echo. Light does not listen for applause, but it listens to form, to space, to the smallest of changes. And so we return to the question, what does light hear in the dark? It hears gravity, it hears time, it hears change. Not with ears, not with interpretation, but with behaviour. Light does not speak, but it responds, and that's its way of listening. It bends when space asks. It shifts when time insists. It carries memory across distances no voice could ever span. And we, who watch it, learn something essential. That the universe does not need words to tell its story. That the silence is not empty, but illuminated. That even in the darkest spaces, something is reaching, not to be heard, but to be understood. Let's drift deeper into the quiet, into the parts of space where nothing has touched for billions of years. Out here, the silence becomes not just a feature, but a force, as if the absence of sound has weight, texture, even memory. It wraps around the stars like a veil and settles in the dark gaps between galaxies like ancient dust. The deeper you go, the less the universe resembles anything we know from Earth. And yet, its silence tells us more about its nature than any roar ever could. We often think of sound as the truest sign of life. The babble of rivers, the song of birds, the thud of footsteps, these are the world's way of proving it is awake. But space shows us something quieter, something older. The idea that motion, light, and gravity can exist without sound. The galaxies swirl, not because they are silent, but because they do not need to be loud. Their grace is in their gravity. Their story is written in spiral arms and glowing dust, not in echoes. Scientists have long wondered about this quiet. They have asked, could there ever be sound in space? And the answer is both yes and no. Yes, in the rare places where gas is thick enough, where particles huddle close enough to touch. In these regions, the heart of a nebula, the belly of a star, vibrations can occur. Pressure waves ripple through plasma, but they do not sound as we know sound. They are too slow, too low, too foreign to our ears. Some take hours or days to complete a single wave, and still they exist. Even the sun pulses with sound, not in the way we hear, but in the way its surface trembles, in waves of heat and pressure that roll across its face. Helioseismology, the study of the sun's vibrations, has given us glimpses into these hidden songs. By observing how the sun's surface shifts and bounces, scientists can understand what lies beneath it. In this way, sound becomes a key, not to hearing, but to seeing. It unlocks structure, reveals movement, traces history. So while the vacuum of space cannot carry sound, the objects within it can hum their own quiet truths. We just need the right instruments to feel them, and yet this strange silence remains. Between stars, the vacuum stretches too wide. Between planets, the dust is too thin. There is nothing to carry the pulse. So events of great energy, collisions, eruptions, births of black holes, unfold without a single wave of sound. They are loud in theory, but not in practice. Their force travels in other ways, through electromagnetic radiation, through light, through the slow tug of gravity. These are silent messengers, but powerful ones. They carry warnings, memories, blueprints of what has been. It is in these silent messengers that we find the music of the universe. A gamma-ray burst so brief it lasts only seconds can be more energetic than all the stars in a galaxy combined. A pulsar spins with perfect rhythm, sending out radio pulses like the ticking of a cosmic clock. A black hole devouring matter warps space itself and sends out gravitational waves, not as a sound, but as a subtle shift in reality. And we, from our tiny planet, watch and listen and feel, not with our ears, but with our minds. This shift from sound to sensation is how we adapt. We build detectors that feel the tremble of space-time. We capture light across invisible spectra. We turn data into images, into graphs, even into music. We sonify signals, translating radio waves or magnetic fields into tones we can hear. These are not real sounds, but they carry real meaning. They let us feel closer to events we can never touch. And maybe that's all we've ever wanted, to feel close to something vast. There's a comfort in the idea that space doesn't care about noise. It unfolds without drama, it lives without applause, and in that quiet we're invited to reflect. Because if silence can hold galaxies, if the stillness can carry time, then maybe we too don't need to be loud to matter. Maybe our quiet moments, the ones filled with thought, with memory, with watching, are just as powerful as our shouts. Think of the Voyager probes again, now billions of kilometers from Earth. They do not speak, they do not sing. They send back faint signals, weaker than a whisper, stretched thin by distance. But we hear them. We listen with giant dishes, with patience, with hope. And in their quiet we hear a kind of love, the love of exploration, of curiosity, of never being too far to care. That is what the silence of space teaches us most, that meaning is not lost in stillness. It is sometimes found there. In ancient times, people looked at the stars and heard nothing, but they still made stories, still imagined gods and animals in the constellations. They knew, without knowing why, that silence didn't mean absence, it meant possibility. Today, with our tools and telescopes, we know more. We understand the science behind the silence. But the wonder remains. We still gaze upward and ask, what's out there? The quiet doesn't stop the question, it deepens it. So next time you hear nothing, think of it not as empty, but as full of potential, full of movement, full of voices too strange to recognize. The universe may not echo, but it does respond. In light, in time, in gravity. It speaks a language older than sound, and we, at last, are learning to listen. There's something gentle about the realization that space, in all its vastness, does not echo. It allows things to happen without judgment, without applause, without a sound. Galaxies form and stretch for millions of years in perfect silence. Stars blossom, burn and collapse into black holes, and none of it stirs a whisper in the void. This silence is not lifeless. It is full of presence. It holds everything together like the pause between heartbeats. It is not cold indifference. It is patient stillness. And in that stillness, something beautiful unfolds, a quiet so deep it teaches us to listen in new ways, to feel without noise, to understand without words. In the absence of sound, the universe gives us other languages. Light is one, time is another. Gravity, perhaps the oldest of all, shapes everything without ever making a sound. It bends space like a river bends through land. It guides the dance of planets, the swirl of stars, the spiral arms of galaxies. And though it is entirely silent, it is never missed. It is felt, always, and in a strange way, it reminds us that the most important forces in life are often the quietest ones, the ones we don't hear, but always sense, like love, like memory, like hope. There is a kind of peace in this understanding that sound is not required for presence, that a thing does not need to shout to be real, that the most extraordinary events can take place in absolute hush. We are used to thinking of sound as proof of action. If a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it, we wonder if it made a sound. But in space, trees, stars, fall all the time, and they do not need ears to make their mark. Their light travels, their gravity pulls, their patterns change the shape of everything around them, and that is enough. Even the Earth, which seems so noisy to us, is mostly quiet when seen from space. You can watch the storms swirl, the oceans turn, the cities blink with light, but you will not hear a thing. No thunder, no engines, no breath of wind. And yet from above, Earth is undeniably alive. It pulses with energy, it speaks through its motion, and in that quiet, its beauty becomes clearer. We are reminded that silence does not strip something of life. It reveals the life that was always there underneath the noise. This idea begins to settle into us, that the universe does not echo because it has never needed to. Its messages are not missed because they are silent. They are felt in the warmth of sunlight, in the balance of orbit, in the soft resistance of gravity that holds our feet to the ground. We do not need to hear these things to believe in them. We only need to pay attention. In this way, the silence of space invites us to deepen our way of noticing, to expand our listening beyond sound into sensation, into observation, into awe. There are scientists who work every day to detect the undetectable. Gravitational waves, dark matter, the faintest signals from the edge of the observable universe. Their work is not about hearing, but about decoding, about catching patterns in the quiet. These patterns are often so subtle, so buried in data, that they require patience bordering on devotion. But when the pattern emerges, a tiny wobble, a small flicker, a slow drift, it is like hearing the first note of a long-lost song. Not loud, but clear, and once seen, it cannot be forgotten. This is what we carry with us then, as we think about the echoes that never were. We carry a new way of understanding silence, a new respect for what it holds. We begin to see that space is not empty. It is just filled with things we cannot hear, and that changes us. We begin to notice the quiet moments in our own lives, the stillness before the morning begins, the pause between sentences, the gentle calm of breathing in the dark. These become our own versions of space, our own silent universes, and maybe that's the gift the universe gives us through its silence, the reminder that we do not need sound to be moved, that some things are so vast, so powerful, so old, they have forgotten how to shout. They exist as presence, as light, as movement. They wait to be noticed, not heard, and when we do notice them, when we finally stop and look, we are changed, not by what we hear, but by what we feel. So let the silence of space be your lullaby. Let it wrap around you like a soft blanket of stars. Let it remind you that quiet does not mean empty, that a vacuum is not a void, that some of the most beautiful truths in the universe come not in a roar, but in the gentle hush of light crossing time. The echoes that never were are not lost, they were never needed. Because the universe was never speaking out loud, it was always speaking to your soul. There is a strange kind of music that exists where no one is listening, a music made not of sound, but of space itself. It plays in the empty places, in the quiet corners between planets, between stars, between galaxies, where nothing touches for millions of years. This is not music you can hear with ears. It does not echo off walls or drift through the air. It is a rhythm without noise, a harmony without instruments. And yet it is there and hidden in the motion of the universe, in the slow turn of distant worlds, in the invisible threads that pull galaxies into spirals. This is the music of empty places, and though it is silent, it sings. When we think of music, we think of sounds, of vibrations carried through air, water, or solid ground. But at its heart, music is pattern. It is order and repetition, contrast and change. It is structure woven through time, and the universe is full of structure. Even in its quietest places, there are patterns. The orbits of moons, the rotations of stars, the expansion of galaxies, all of these follow rhythms, not random or wild, but steady, precise, beautiful in their simplicity. These rhythms stretch across light years, across epochs, across the coldest spaces known to science. They are slow, too slow for any song we know, but they are music just the same. In the emptiest parts of the cosmos, where not even dust drifts freely, the background hum of the universe still remains. It is not a hum you can hear, it is the faint microwave echo left over from the beginning of everything, from the moment the universe began to expand. This hum is called the cosmic microwave background radiation. It fills all of space, even the places where there is nothing else. It is a memory, a ghost of fire, stretched so thin by time that it no longer burns. But it is still there, like a note held far too long, still vibrating at the edge of silence. Scientists have mapped it, measured its tiny fluctuations, and found that even this faint background carries structure, peaks and valleys like the rise and fall of a melody no one ever composed. And there is more. Black holes, the most silent places in existence, also participate in this music. When they collide, they send out waves, not of sound, but of gravity. These gravitational waves ripple through space itself, warping the distance between everything. We cannot hear them with our ears, but with delicate instruments we can feel their rhythm. One wave may pass through Earth and stretch us thinner, just slightly, before squeezing us back again. We do not notice it, but the Earth remembers. It becomes part of the dance, and in this dance there is music. Even the paths of comets and the flicker of stars obey a kind of time. Pulsars, the collapsed hearts of exploded stars, spin with perfect regularity, sending out beams of radiation like the ticks of a giant clock. Some spin hundreds of times each second, never missing a beat. To us these may seem like signals or pulses, but to the universe they are percussion, they are tempo. A reminder that even in the vast quiet something is always keeping time. And then there is light, the universe's most fluent language. Light does not need sound to express itself. It shimmers in patterns. It bends, reflects, splits, and fades with elegance. Every star has its own spectrum, a signature of colours and temperatures that forms its own visual song. When light passes through dust or gas, it scatters, softens, shifts. These changes are like harmonies layered over a note. We do not need ears to hear them. We only need eyes to see the rhythm in the glow. There are places where this music is barely a whisper, and places where it is so complex that it becomes a symphony of physics, the rings of Saturn shifting with gravitational tugs from moons, the clouds of Jupiter swirling in deep, slow storms, the spiral arms of galaxies swinging wide in perfect, graceful arcs. These are not accidents. They are not chaos. They are movements set to the slowest beat imaginable, playing across distances too vast for us to fully grasp. And though we may not hear them in the air, we feel them in our bones, because we are made of this same universe, born from its dust, formed in the quiet womb of its dark. To call these empty places silent is true, but not complete. They are quiet, yes, but not lifeless, not meaningless. Their silence is not the end of something, but the beginning. It is the space where structure becomes visible, where order reveals itself not through sound, but through presence, through motion, through light. It is a kind of music that asks for patience, for attention, for stillness, and in return it gives back wonder. So next time you imagine the dark spaces between stars, do not imagine them blank. Imagine them full of slow, deep rhythm. Imagine them pulsing with the quiet music of gravity and light, Imagine a song that has no melody, no words, no volume, but still moves you, still invites you to listen, still waits to be felt in the spaces between your own thoughts. That is the music of empty places, and it is always playing. Imagine now that you're drifting farther into that great hush, away from the stars and their glowing neighborhoods, deeper into regions where the darkness is thick and unbroken. There are no planets here, no comets, no drifting ships, just you and the emptiness. And still in that emptiness the music continues. You cannot hear it with ears, but you begin to sense it, like a memory you've never had but always carried. The pulse of the universe is still there, too slow for sound, too soft for words. It moves through space like breath, like a long exhale stretched across time. These empty places are not truly silent, because silence in the universe is never truly still. Every particle, no matter how lonely, carries motion. Every atom, even in its coldest state, still shivers with quantum energy. These tiny dances are part of the song, notes so faint they escape all instruments, yet they're constant. They tell us that even the vacuum is never really empty. It hums with virtual particles flickering into and out of existence, brief sparks of something in the middle of nothing. They exist for only a moment, but those moments are endless. Like the quiet ticking of time in a world without clocks, they shape the feel of space itself. This hidden motion is not random, it's guided by laws, by physics that governs not only stars and planets, but even the fabric of space itself. These laws are not rules like ones written in books. They are patterns, woven deep into the very bones of the universe. And it is this deep order, this ancient rhythm that we can think of as the universe's music. Not music made to be heard, but music that is simply by being, by continuing, by unfolding. We feel this in the way galaxies spin. The stars in their arms follow paths that are curved, deliberate, graceful. Each galaxy is like a slow-turning dance, where every star plays its part. Some have billions of stars, each one orbiting a center they cannot see, a black hole, massive and dark, singing a gravity song so low and deep it can only be felt in the shape of things. These rotations are not just motion, they are timing. Their rhythm is too large for us to tap our fingers to, but it is rhythm just the same. Even clusters of galaxies, those immense gatherings of worlds, move in response to forces we barely understand. They drift through space in patterns shaped by the invisible currents of dark matter and the ancient pull of gravity. They do not collide at random. They swirl and settle, expand and stretch, as if answering to a beat we cannot hear. This movement, this cosmic choreography, is slow and vast, but if we watch closely over millions of years, we can see the tempo, the grace, the unfolding of something old and beautiful. Here on Earth, our music is short-lived. A song may last a few minutes, a symphony, an hour, but the universe thinks in ages. Its symphonies last for eons, its crescendos unfold over billions of years. The building of a galaxy is like a note that takes an entire age to play. And in between these notes, in the wide spaces of quiet, the music deepens. Like pauses in a song that let the next sound rise more clearly, the silence of the cosmos gives meaning to its motion. Even time itself participates in this music. Time does not tick the same in all places. It stretches near massive objects, slows near black holes, shifts with motion. These variations, predicted by Einstein and confirmed by experiments, mean that the tempo of the universe is not fixed. It breathes, it flexes, it adjusts. And this too adds a richness to the silent rhythm of space. It makes each moment a little different, a little unique, like a variation on a theme played across all of existence. And then there is light. Not the harsh light of a lamp, but the ancient travelling light of stars. It moves in waves, and each wave carries a tone. The shorter waves are blue and energetic. The longer waves are red and calm. When a star moves, its light shifts, like a note bending as an instrument plays. When galaxies rush away from each other, their light stretches, their songs deepen. And when a star explodes, its light flashes outward in all directions, a burst of brightness that races into the empty places, carrying a silent melody across space. Let us now follow a single beam of light, not a dramatic burst, not a blinding flash, but a simple, quiet photon, born in the heart of a star millions of years ago. It begins its journey inside a dense furnace, where atoms collide with such intensity that light is born in layers of fire. But even here, in the most violent environment, light listens. It senses pressure, temperature, resistance. It pushes forward slowly through the thick interior of the star, bouncing again and again, changing direction with every collision. What takes us seconds to imagine may take this photon thousands of years, yet it endures, not in a rush, but in rhythm. Because even in the chaos of birth, light waits. When it finally escapes into open space, it moves fast, the fastest anything can. It glides through the void not as a solid, not as a wave riding on air, but as energy bound to motion itself. And still it listens. The vacuum may seem empty, but it is not still. It seethes with quantum fluctuations, with ghost particles flickering in and out of being. Light travels through this field with care, responding to what it meets. A passing gravitational wave might stretch the space it moves through, slowing it by a fraction so small we cannot measure it. But light notices. It does not resist. It moves forward, changed. As it continues across the darkness, light passes through regions shaped by old stars and distant galaxies. Dust clouds obscure it. Magnetic fields bend it. And in each of these places, it adapts. The colour may shift slightly, the path may wobble, but the message it carries, the fingerprint of its source, remains. This is what makes light such a perfect listener. It does not overwrite the story, it carries it, preserves it. And when it arrives at our telescopes thousands or millions of years later, that story is still intact. Through silence, through darkness, through distortion, the light remembered. Some photons pass through gas clouds where atoms are waiting. Hydrogen, helium, carbon. As they move through, they might be absorbed, only to be re-emitted in a slightly different direction or with slightly less energy. These interactions leave marks, lines in a spectrum, that tell us about the elements present, their temperature, their density, even their motion. Light, in this way, becomes a listener to the materials it passes. Each stop along the journey leaves an imprint. Each change becomes part of the final arrival. And from these changes, we reconstruct what the light has heard. We decode silence into understanding. In the space between galaxies, where the stars grow thin and even gravity stretches into a slow hum and light keeps moving. It has no mass, but it carries momentum. It cannot be slowed, but it can be delayed. It does not need a medium, but it still responds to space itself. In the most extreme distances, light becomes redshifted, stretched by the expanding universe. Its energy thins, its message dims, but it does not stop. It continues, crossing the ocean of time not because it must, but because it can. Because that is what light does. It travels, and it remembers. Even black holes, the ultimate silence, cannot fully trap it. Light that passes near a black hole is bent around it in a graceful arc. In some cases, it may orbit for a while before escaping. These orbits, called photon spheres, are some of the strangest structures in the cosmos. Places where light itself loops in silence. And though we cannot hear what happens there, we can see it, in the way distant stars appear distorted, stretched into rings or mirrored into halos. This bending tells us what the light encountered. The shape of space becomes the voice, and light as always listens. Here on Earth, we harness this listening. We use spectrographs to read the starlight. We send lasers across vast distances to measure the curvature of space. We use fiber optics to carry the internet through pulses of light, and with each of these we are engaging in a kind of conversation, so not by speaking but by receiving. We are learning to understand what light has to say, not because it speaks, but because it responds. And in that response there is meaning. Even our eyes, ancient instruments of biology, are built to listen to light. Photons strike the cells in our retinas and set off electrical pulses that travel to our brains. We see colour not because light is coloured, but because our minds translate its frequencies into feeling. Blue is not in the light. It is in the way we interpret short wavelengths. Red is not a thing that exists on its own. It is the story of a photon slowed slightly, stretched across the air. Our vision is built on light's ability to carry stories, to echo the conditions of the world it has passed through. And when night falls and the stars appear above us, each one is a letter from the past. The photons that touch your eyes tonight may have left their star before your grandparents were born. They are old messages, arriving late but arriving just the same. The stars do not speak. They shine. The light they give off does not shout. It endures, and in that endurance it hears everything, not with ears, but with memory. So what does light hear in the dark? It hears the shape of gravity, the stretch of time, the rise and fall of motion. It hears the pull of stars, the passage of space, the silent rhythm of expansion. It hears everything the darkness does not say, and brings that silence into view. And when it finally reaches us, we become part of the conversation. We become the listener. Now let us rest inside the idea that light, though it has no ears, is always listening. Not because it wants to, but because that is what its nature allows. It is the great traveller of space, the slow messenger of time, the quiet carrier of ancient stories. And as it moves, as it bends and shifts and scatters, it gathers impressions, each one subtle, each one a kind of echo, each one shaped by the dark. Light never pauses. Once born, it moves at a speed that defines our understanding of motion itself. It does not drift aimlessly, nor is it guided by will. It moves because the fabric of the universe allows no other choice. And in this movement, it responds to the unseen. When space curves, light curves too. When the path is stretched, light stretches with it. This is not hearing in any traditional sense, but it is a kind of attention, a kind of respect, a kind of participation in the ever-changing architecture of space and time. Think of the early universe, a time before galaxies, before stars, when the cosmos was still thick with plasma, light bouncing in every direction but going nowhere. Then, in a moment of cooling clarity, the universe became transparent. Light broke free. It began to travel, uninterrupted, across the void. That light still moves today. We call it the cosmic microwave background. It is not loud, it is not even visible to our eyes, but it is everywhere. A remnant of when light first listened to space as it truly was, expanding, stretching, forming. That background hum carries the fingerprint of the universe's earliest conditions, like the soft hiss of a memory too old to speak but too important to forget. Everywhere light goes, it interacts. Even when it is absorbed, it changes things. A planet warms, a molecule vibrates, a seed germinates. These are not responses to volume, but to presence. And in the presence of light, everything behaves differently. Flowers open, shadows fall, clocks begin to tick. This is light's quiet gift. It does not force its will, but invites change. It listens by being sensitive, and it teaches by being constant. On Earth, even the smallest beam of light reveals shape. When it hits a surface, it defines that surface. It outlines the edge of a rock, the bend of a river, the curve of a hand. The shadows it casts are soft answers to the questions it asks. What does this shape look like? Where does it begin? Where does it end? Without light, form remains hidden. With light, even silence becomes visible. In art, we chase the quality of light, the golden hours and silver haze, harsh angles and soft reflections. We try to capture what it reveals, to bottle its quiet clarity. Photographers speak of light reading a scene. Painters follow its warmth across skin. And in this way, we mimic light's attentiveness. We seek, as light does, to reflect the world, to honour what is present, not by changing it, but by showing it, listening not through sound, but through focus. And in our most sacred spaces, temples, cathedrals, mosques, light becomes part of the design. It streams through windows at just the right angle, glows across stone at just the right hour. It fills the quiet with presence. It reminds us that even in silence, even in stillness, something is always arriving. Something is always touching the world without disturbing it. That something is light. In the vast emptiness between galaxies, light continues. Even when it grows so faint we can no longer see it, it still moves. Even when it passes through gas clouds and is absorbed, it leaves behind energy. Even when it is pulled into a black hole, it reveals the shape of the hole's edge. Light tells us everything we know about the universe, not through speaking, but through interaction, through bending, through fading, through arrival. And we who watch it, who build tools to follow its trail, are not just observers. We are listeners too. The silence of space is vast, but it is not empty. It is illuminated, it is shaped, and it is filled with motion that light has faithfully followed for billions of years. What it hears is not noise, it is structure. What it hears is not a song, it is a path. What it hears is not a command, it is an invitation to move forward. And always it accepts. So when you sit in your room at night and the only light is the soft glow from a distant star, remember that it has come a long way to reach you, that it has passed through fields of dust and rivers of gravity, that it has carried the imprint of ancient worlds and bent around invisible masses, and now it touches your wall, your floor, your eye, gently, silently. It does not demand attention, but it brings everything it has heard, it brings everything it has seen, and in that touch you are reminded, even in silence, even in darkness, you are not forgotten. The light still finds you. Because that is what light does. It listens, it carries, it arrives.